Both Chief White House correspondent Major Garrett and moderator of Face the Nation, John Dickerson, join us now. John, let me start with you. What were the big takeaways from last night's Voters Forum?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that Donald Trump wasn't there, which is not just that he wasn't on stage, but the 2 hours went by in a kind of placid way you might have expected if Donald Trump had never decided to enter the race. The candidates kind of gave a paragraph from their prepared stump speeches. They didn't make any waves. They were all very polite. The format exacerbated that. The questions were not particularly tough, and they were shuttled on and off stage as if on some kind of moving sidewalk. So it was like a parallel universe in the one we're in, where Donald Trump has upended the debate and appears to have done that not just because he's an entertaining personality, but because he says things that are candid and appears to talk about what's on his mind, as opposed to giving those prepackaged, pre-programmed recitations.
So a lot of the candidates, they didn't mention Donald Trump personally, but they did mention Hillary Clinton. And John, some of those candidates went after Hillary Clinton. The hardest, Senator Lindsey Graham, even went after Clinton and her husband. Let's take a listen.
I'm fluent in Clinton speak. You want me to translate, Jack? When he says, Bill says, I didn't have sex with that woman, he did. When she says, I'll tell you about building the pipeline when I get to be president, means she won't. And when she tells us, trust me, you've got all the emails that you need, we haven't even scratched the surface. So I understand this crowd, and I can beat them, and if we can't beat them, it doesn't matter.
John, was this just a tactic to stand out among the other candidates?
All of the candidates have a set of attacks against Hillary Clinton. It's almost a compulsory exercise in the debate, and they've been doing it for months. What was interesting there about Graham's pitch, and all the candidates did this, but this is where they tried to distinguish themselves, is they all tried to explain how they were the candidate for the general election. And so what Graham was doing there was not just attacking Clinton for the fun of it, but also trying to say he has a special talent for going after them. Other candidates made that case too, but they also said, I'm from a blue state and was able to win in a blue state, or I have the following different kinds of experiences that'll make me the best general election candidate. So when primary voters are thinking about candidates, the two big things they keep in mind are the ideological matchup. Do they agree with the ideological positions? And then the second thing is, do they think that person can win in the general election? And that was what each of the candidates was the questions each of the candidates were trying to answer in the forum last night.
Major, there are new CBS poll numbers out today. Trump is still going strong as the front runner with 24%. But interestingly enough, 27% of voters also say they would be dissatisfied if he's the Republican nominee. What do you make of that?
He's leading at a time when it doesn't matter, or it doesn't matter as much. And what I mean by that is voters can sometimes send a signal to other candidates that they may end up supporting down the stream by saying, I want you to listen to this guy, and I want you to fight like he does, or talk like he does, or identify the issues that he does. And if you do, then I may switch my support. Trump, in some respects, is being used as a means by which to send a message to either the establishment of the Republican Party or those Republican primary voters and caucus voters who are sizing up this field believe are too timid or not aggressive enough on the issues they care about.
All right. And John, let's look ahead to Thursday, the big debate everybody's looking forward to. What's the takeaway? What are your sources telling you about specific strategies that candidates are going to use? And can any of those candidates in the middle of the pack stand out on Thursday?
Well, it's challenged to stand out and get in the news stories the next day, which are almost certain to have Donald Trump doing something. So do you want to be in that exchange with Donald Trump? They're all thinking about this. Most of the campaigns I've talked to are going to try and pitch the candidates themselves. This is their moment to talk to voters directly and make the case for why they should be president. I think on the top tier of the non-Trump candidates, I think the view is basically to get their message across, be prepared if Trump comes after them, to defend themselves, but that it's too risky to try to go after Trump and create some moment against him. Now, for candidates at the lower end of the polling group of the top 10 that will be there may be a little bit more risk-taking. But it's a very tough format because there's just not a lot of time. So I think that we're going to have to see what happens there. But one of the things I've gotten both from advisors to the various campaigns and talking to people who prepare for debates or have in the past is that it's very hard to go after somebody like Donald Trump and be successful. There's just a little more risk than reward, possibly.
Major, last question. For those who are going to be on the stage Thursday night, what does victory look like?
Well, victory looks like not making a huge mistake. First of all, do no harm if you're a candidate. Second of all, understand that you're going to prepare for 3 days for maybe 8 minutes of time, maybe 8. Make the most of your time with your message. And I think there's an interesting conundrum for Donald Trump. Does he look presidential and sort of bring down the temperature and look like a lot of the other politicians because he wants to suggest to voters he really can do the job and they should think about him as a commander-in-chief? Or does he stay with what has worked for him so far, which is to be a little bit more on the louder, bombastic scale? If he comes down and looks presidential, it could be a very quiet debate, kind of underwhelming. But what does that do to Donald Trump's supporters? Do they look at him and say, well, wait a minute, are you acting like a politician now? I actually think there's kind of an interesting decision for Donald Trump to make, and I completely agree with John. I don't think any Republican is going to try to land a haymaker on Donald Trump because the risk there is so much higher than the potential reward. I think there are going to be a lot of eyeballs on Trump, not just those of us who cover it, but those candidates who will be on stage as well.
All right, Major Garrett, John Dickerson, thank you.